everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Samantha Anderson. I am a freelance artist and teacher hoping to inspire creativity. If you would like more videos like these, please take a second to like and subscribe down below. It really helps in the algorithm of YouTube to help get my videos seen to more people. If you want to receive notifications of when I go live, please make sure to hit the bell and choose all notifications. If you have any questions during or after the class, make sure to pop a comment down below and I will answer it as soon as I can. I'll be leaving timestamps down below so you can skip ahead to the start of class, but I will be sharing announcements as well as supplies, so make sure to stick around for that. If interested in learning more about my classes, please follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and feel free to check me out on Patreon where I teach exclusive classes to those who support me. In Patreon, I also give traceables for all of my live classes, including this one. Lastly, if you would like to share your work after class with me and others who painted along with us, please head over to Facebook as I have an artist community where you can share your finished painting with us. I'll leave links for all of that in the description box below. Thanks for joining me, and let's get started. Hello everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, another class. Today we are doing this wonderful kind of campfire bonfire. And yeah, I'm just excited. If you've never painted fire before, it is quite fun, and I think it's a little easier than it might seem. So we're gonna have fun with this. But yeah, let's go ahead and go over materials. I'll go over a few announcements just in regards to classes, upcoming classes, classes that are now available, and then we'll get started in painting, okay? The first thing I want to do is go over material. So I have a traceable in my Patreon. I'm not using the traceable today, but it is available for anyone who just doesn't want to deal with trying to figure out where everything goes. If you're not comfortable drawing it by yourself, I do have that available. It's linked in the description as well as the live stream chat. It's also in pretty much every post that I post on Facebook. It's going to be somewhere in there, and if not, click on one of those links and you'll find it. So that is available for patrons. It's a $5 tip, and you also get access to all the other traceables for this month too. So that is available in my Patreon. Feel free to go grab that if you want that. But I will be going over kind of it without it if you want to follow along that way as well. I am using an 11 by 14 canvas. As usual, this is just a regular one from Michaels. I think it's from Michaels. Either Michaels or Hobby Lobby. I get them mixed up. But it's just a regular one from there. Feel free to use a different canvas if you have a different size, an 8 by 10, a 9 by 12. Both of my traceables sizing in my Patreon are for 11 by 14 and 9 by 12. But if you're a patron and you want a different size, either larger or smaller, just message me and let me know, and I can it's really easy to whip up a different size on that. So just let me know. For colors, I'm not totally sure what I told you to prepare, but just kind of have an array of warm colors and then your cool colors. So I do have obviously your black and your white. You are going to need your black and your white, but other than that, you're going to have just a few different colors. I have my raw umber, so I can get some browns in there, and then I have, what I mean by warm colors is I have my my yellows and reds, yellow, orange, red, and then for my cool colors, I'm just going to have that blue, and I do have a green out, but I'm not sure if I'm going to use it. But yeah, if you have different variations of these colors, like a yellow ochre or a different type of brown, that's fine too. My favorite is a raw umber because it's dark and I can always change the warmthness with like the other colors that I have. But if you have like a raw sienna or something like that, you can always add black to it to create that raw umber effect. So it's really kind of just like whatever you have on hand. I am very much a non-stickler when it comes to specific colors, and more of just like, oh, you have a blue, let's use that. So use what you have, and we'll go from there. I think I'm gonna put my green away. I don't really think there's any greens in here. All right, and we are kind of going to be simplifying the background a little bit just because there is so many trees. It's more of just going to be like kind of like a blurry type of forest in the back, but we're going to be layering it, okay? So that's going to be fun. Other materials that you might want, obviously you have your water, your paper towel, and then a palette. I have this glass palette. I've been using it for over a year, and it's been great. Maybe over a year. Actually, I don't even know if it's been a year. It's been lovely to have. And I use a palette knife for all my mixing. So if you have a glass palette or have a flat palette, I highly recommend getting a palette knife, because not only do you keep your water clean because you're not rinsing out the brushes that you are mixing your colors with, but you also don't waste paint when you're doing that. You can also mix more amounts of paint, I feel like, faster, because you're not trying to get all that paint out of the brushes. Speaking of brushes, most of the brushes that I use are from Grabby. They sent me a kit a while ago, and it's been really nice to use. I do have a couple others that I use, but I will be going over them kind of as I use them. The main one I'm going to be using right off the bat is going to be my filbert, my large filbert. I use that for most of the background. If you have a bigger brush and that you would like to use for that, that's fine. Use what you have, use what you like, use your favorites. But if you don't know what to use, I typically like to use a filbert over a flat brush, because when I'm blending in the background, I find that with a flat brush, you tend to have like the corners streaking, and with a filbert, I have less of that. It's more, those edges are more blended. So that's just a personal preference that I like. You're also going to need for this class potentially a toothbrush or a brush that you can do some either stippling with or like flicking to get some of those embers and things like that. Other than that, I will be using a small filbert and then probably a medium round. That's kind of my go-tos. Here, I'll put them up on the screen real fast. These are like my go-tos. So I have a large filbert. I still don't know which one it is if you say the T or not. A filbert, a medium filbert, and then a like a medium to small round brush. Those are like my go-tos. Okay, does anybody have any questions before we get started? Let me know in the comments below. In my Patreon this month, we have a exclusive class. We have a couple. One is for our magenta tier, so that's the $10 tier. So it's one level up from just the traceables. And if you go in the magenta tier, you will also get the traceables. So this is what we painted this month. This was available on Friday. All of my classes in my Patreon are pre-recorded and then they go live. So you can literally, I think you'll have access to 51 classes in the magenta tier that you can go back and paint. So if you want access to this class, you'll also get access to literally all of those classes. So this was all really fun. If you have questions about skin tones and things like that, this is the class to do that with. Last week, we did this class, and contrary to what we just did in Patreon, we did a human, but they were not human skin tones. So it's all kind of fun abstract colors. So if you struggle with those types of colorings, this is definitely the class for you, because it was a lot of fun. We did all sorts of colors. I'm loving seeing everybody's posts on it, because they're all so different, but they're all so cool. They're like, I don't know, abstract is so fun because it's very unique to, the person who's painting it. So this was a really fun one. If you want that, that one's available free on my YouTube. So that one you can just paint for free. And then lastly, I don't remember if I showed you guys the first step of this one last week. I can't remember. But we are painting a snow leopard, and it looks better now than it did yesterday. Yesterday I was finishing up. We did 1 hour two weeks ago, and then one another hour for this class. And when I was done with it, I was like, man, I don't want anybody to see this. It's like right smack dab in the middle of like my work in progress. Like I have one ear done and the other ear's not, and like half of his face isn't done, but the other like parts of it is. So I was like, nobody look at this, but I always post my work in progresses of this class on Wednesday. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna post it, and this is what it is. It looks a lot better than I remember it looking. But yeah, so we are in the middle of this one. If you like painting big cats, we're also painting a sneak peek. We're painting a lion next month. We're painting this now, and then earlier last year we painted a tiger. So if you like painting big cats, my Patreon right now is the place to be. So this is available to the Cobalt tier. And that's where we go week by week for like 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes 5. And we just work on a painting together, and it's a lot of fun. You kind of get a little bit more in depth of my painting process, at least, while being able to paint for yourself too. Okay, I think that is all the announcements. If nobody has any questions, we can get started. All right, so the first thing we need to do is kind of figure out where everything is and put in our background. So we're going to do a very light sketch of where everything is, and then we're going to put in the background, okay? So I'm going to grab my yellow. I like to do my sketches in yellow, especially if there's already yellow and light colors in here. I like to do it in yellow because yellow mixed with a little bit of white is really, really light, and it's easy to cover up, but I can still see it. A lot of times when I paint in, or if I draw it on that graphite, not only will it mix into the light colors, but then I have to like erase it, or it's hard to cover up if I go over it with a lighter color like these whites and yellows. I'll have to go over a lot more to cover up the pencil marks, and I don't really want to do that. So I'm just going to use a color that I'm already going to use here, and that will help this process. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a small brush, dip it in my water, grab a little bit of yellow, grab some white, mix that together. This is like the only time you'll see me like mix my paint with a paintbrush. And I'm mixing it with a good amount of water. And what this water does is it allows the paint to go on very, very thinly, which means it'll be not as potent, I don't smell it. It won't be as like dense with color. It'll be a little bit more translucent, as well as it'll dry really fast. So I'm just gonna grab some of this and figure out where I want everything. So the fire pit is about right here. So I'm just gonna kind of draw roughly where this fire pit is. Okay, so it's about there. We're gonna be adding things in it. I'm gonna say that the bottom of the fire pit comes here, so you can kind of see like the inside of it, and there's gonna be rocks and stuff like that. But if you want to draw the rocks now, if you like that sort of thing and you want to draw the rocks now, you can. I think I might just kind of sketch in some of these. And by no means does it have to look like the picture. If you want to draw rocks that are or aren't there, or you can add some later, that's totally fine too. I'm just gonna draw a couple of these. I'm gonna draw a couple more of these. Just basic shapes, and some of these I can't really see, so I'm not gonna really draw those in. All right, so this is the fire. And I'm gonna go ahead and put in maybe in a slightly darker color. In a slightly darker color, I'm gonna put in the wood that's coming out of here. Okay, so I have one wood that's coming here. And this kind of goes all the way up. Some of it we end up not seeing, but just for consistency. And again, this is really, really watery, so it goes on very easily, but it's very, it's gonna dry really, really fast. And we have another one that's kind of coming over here. Again, if you want to make yours like different shapes and things like that, do it. It's totally fine. Just gonna there's a couple other ones in here. Just basic. I'm gonna put one over here too to balance it out a little bit. All right, and there's other details in there, but we can do that later. Okay, so that's like the base of that. And I think that's all we need to start our background. All right, so let's go ahead and make that blue color we have. And then I'm just gonna fade it down to black pretty much, and then we can add our leaves kind of on top of it. So the first thing we need to do is make our blue. It's mostly white, but it does have some of this blue in there, and it's kind of a little bit grayed out. So I have my blue, my white. I'm gonna put some black on my palette. So I have blue, white, and I added just a touch of brown. And I'm gonna add a tiny bit of a bright blue to it. Just to change the color like ever so slightly. Kind of like a aqua green, greenish blue that I'm gonna add to it. That's just to add a hint of green to the sky. Okay. I like that, but I think I need more of it. Alright, so I have my main blue, kind of a grayish blue, and then I did add white. Whoa. I added white to some of that, just to have a lighter color to pull from, in case I wanted some lighter spots, because it's kind of lighter here in the middle. Alright. So once you have a good sky color that you want, that you'd like to use, we're going to go ahead and grab our biggest brush and dip it in water, wipe it off so it's not dripping. And we're just going to go for it. We're going to pull down our colors to practically, we're just going to fade it into like a really, really dark color, almost like maybe a blackish brown, all the way down. So I'm going to start with my lighter color first and do the top of here. Just so I don't forget about it, because I am one for forgetting the top. Alright, so I'm going to start with this lighter color. And then I'm going to start going into my darker color. If your colors are too far apart, like kind of like mine are, how there's a very, very, very big difference between those two colors, what you can do is you can put your dark color in below, like put it below your light color. And then what you're going to do after you get that in, you're just going to brush it up into that lighter color and blend it that way. And then once you've done that, you're going to go all the way across it, big long strokes, and you can do that as many times as you need to blend it in. And then you can just continue. You can do that again by putting that dark. You can do the same thing, going all the way across in very long strokes. doesn't have to be perfect because there's going to be a lot of like bushes and things like that and trees that are going to come down into all of that. So don't worry if it's not like perfectly blended. It doesn't have to be. But it is a good time to practice your blending if you want to practice that. So I'm going to get about to here, and then I'm going to start adding these other colors into that blue. And when you get to about here, you're going to want to try to avoid where you want your fire. As much as you can. I'm going to do the sides here. And while this is still wet, I'm going to go ahead and dip into this black. And I'm going to start blending it up into this blue, just like we did before. And with this, I do want a little bit more of a line. So I'm not too worried about blending that perfectly because there's going to be trees coming in. And if your blue has already started to dry, go ahead and just dip your brush into that same blue, and then you can blend it a little bit more. But this side does come up a little bit more with like some of the trees and stuff, if you're trying to do it like the reference. Alright, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the remaining of this blue, and it's kind of got like this blue-gray that a lot of these rocks have. So with a good amount of water, I'm just going to do a wash and just get that color on here. And a wash is where it is practically like 90% water, but it does have a little bit of that color. I can still see my yellow, I can still see all that, but it gets that first coat of just color and that gray on here. That's helpful for later. All right. So I'm just kind of shaping the fire a little bit with the dark spaces. All right, so now we kind of get to create our background a little bit more. I'm going to recreate some of this color that we did for the background. So that's my white, my black, like a tiny bit of black, my blue, and I had a tiny bit of brown. So we're going to do a couple layers, and with each of these layers, we're going to add more black. So I'm just working on trying to create that same color that I was using. It's not an easy thing to do, so if you need to take your time, that's okay. And it doesn't need to be perfect, just get it close to what it was. Or if you made enough of that color, then you can just use what you have. Okay, so I'm gonna rinse out my brush. After, have some of this black on here. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with this main blue color and just kind of see where I'm just gonna do some lines in the back here. And then I'm going to stipple my brush. And we're really just working here at the top. So I'm just stippling the top, getting some of those tree-like feelings. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add some of this black to this blue. So it's a little bit grayer, it's a little bit darker. You can add some more stippling. Essentially, we're just adding busyness to the back, and eventually it's going to be full of background. It's just going to be pushed into the back. All right, so once you kind of get a little bit, it's going to look like this. This is kind of the ugly stage, just trust me. Once you get to this stage, we can start adding in our black. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in where we want our main black trees, okay? So there's a couple small ones, there's a couple big ones. I'm going to do the big ones first, so then I know where to put the small ones and I don't waste time and effort. There's a big one that's like right here. I'm going to start small. I can always make it bigger. And don't forget to go over the top with these ones. And I think I might need to add a second layer on this. So I'm not going to worry about it being a perfect, like a perfect solid, you know, black tree. Other ones in here. And it's okay if they're like a little bit blurry. Because it is the background, not everything is in focus. You don't want everything to be in focus. Alright, so I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, grab some water, grab some black, and I'm going to put in some of these. I'm actually going to grab a little bit of this blue so that it's not completely black, and I'm going to put in a couple ones that are maybe a little bit further in the back. Alright, so now what you're going to do is you're just going to add some branches to some of these. Some of them you don't need to. And you can just kind of put them in. They don't have to be specific. Essentially at this point, kind of like the more you do, the better. do some of these black ones too. And we'll be stippling in some other things. So right now we're just putting in branches so that when we put in the main like bulk of all of the brush and the leaves, that our eyes will have something to be like, yes, that makes sense, because there's you know, there's branches everywhere. All right, so go ahead and get out whatever stipple brush you want. If you have a specific one that you like, do that. If you want to do a fan brush, you can do that. I'm actually going to get out a liner brush to do a couple branches up here at the top where there might not be as much going on. I'm just going to do a couple here and there. And I'm only doing this to the ones in black. That just kind of gives the eye and the illusion that there's just branches everywhere. Okay, so now you're going to grab your stipple brush, whatever one that you like to do. I have this older one that likes to separate. I've used it for a long time. I'm only putting paint on kind of the upper part of it. You can also use a sponge, which actually, that would be really good right now. Let me show you what that looks like. So here is a sponge that I use. You can get this one. Done. Get a little bit of paint on it, and I usually like to squeeze it. And you can use the roundness part of it to put some like in the background, and that's a really fun thing too. So use whatever you have. Use your stippling brush. Use a sponge. And have fun. And I'm actually going to bring up this black a little bit. Maybe there's like bushes and other things that are causing this darkness. The nice thing about a sponge is that when you get less on it, you can add some really subtle things to the background that are harder to add with other like things. So I did a lot of the subtleties with the sponge, and then I'm coming behind with my filbert and kind of adding a little bit more of like the leaves and stuff like that, where they like just has a little bit more opacity, I guess. But again, all of this is really gonna fade into the background once we start putting in our fire. All right, you just want to make sure that you don't cover up all the blue, because that's what adds your contrast. But I am going to darken up this, so it almost gives a vignette sort of feeling. Because the lightest part is right here and everything around it is kind of darker. That's kind of fun. All right, so we have that. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse out my brush. I think I'm gonna bring down my black. All right, so now we get to put in our let's go ahead and put in our logs, and we're gonna do this. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my filbert, or you can do this with a like a flat brush if you wanted to. I'll grab my black, and I'm going to full on just black put these in. And we will add layers to this as we go, but for now they're gonna be black. So that is that. I'm going to go ahead and use this blue that I have left over, and I'm gonna put it everywhere where there is like a, I'm gonna put it everywhere like the tops of the rocks that are kind of reflecting the light a little bit, and I'm just gonna start putting that in. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to block a little bit more in where all of these things are. And we'll be able to come behind and like add more layers and things like that. And as we go through, I'm also going to come behind here and put in some darks. And this is going to start giving the rocks a little bit of depth. Essentially, you're going to have three colors. You're going to have the light, the dark, and then the medium. So just try to find out where all those are, and like where your shadows are, if the light is coming from this direction, kind of down and over. And we'll add the like the heat reflection, the light reflection on these back ones later. Right now we're just trying to get the base colors of these rocks. And I think I'm gonna leave the back side of it dark. This is usually this is the part of the class that I get a little bit quiet, because if I have nothing to like teach on a bigger scale of like a certain technique, then I tend to get a little bit quiet, because my rocks, because I'm not using the traceable, and even if I was, like, my rocks are gonna look different than yours. So unless I have a tip about how to like create within that rock, I'll get a little bit quiet, because your rocks are gonna look different than mine, and so me telling you every little thing that I'm doing might not necessarily help you in being able to create your own rocks, if that makes sense. But I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong and if you want me to tell you exactly what I'm doing. I'm just kind of looking at the rocks and trying to figure out where the lights are, where the darks are, and how that affects the shape of the rock. I want to come in with like a darker piece. I'm just adding light parts into the dark parts. And I'm allowing this part to be very rough because we can always refine it later, but we can't refine something that doesn't exist and that's like not there. So first we kind of got to get paint in the general area of where things are so that we can come and create and fix things later. So right now I'm just looking at the darks and the lights and figuring out where my blacks are so that I can create contrast. of this blue. And this is the part where you get to change your shapes. Like this initial line is like this, where I want it a little bit more tilted. So I'm just not gonna follow that when I get to it, because I'm gonna change the shape and the direction that it's gonna go. Just kind of roughly patching this in. I'm going to add a little bit of darkness here. It's good when you keep talking, although breaks are nice too. Even if you're doing this, keep talking about shadows, lines, highlights, etc. Okay, that's helpful. I can do that. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what I've alluded to. I'm going to put in some darker shadows on this corner, because this is like the outer corner, so this is like where it's going to be its darkest, probably, with the rocks. But I have to wait for that to dry, because it's not liking me right now. Got too much water. All right, let's do the back a little bit. This is a friendly reminder to rinse out the brushes that you're not using. And if you used a sponge, now's the time to do that, because if you don't rinse it out now and you forget about it until after class, it's gonna be dried in there, and then you'll be real sad. I will be real sad for you. All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and do some rocks in the back. First, I'm going to get some of this black and put in kind of the flooring of this. Right. So I think at this point we can start putting in our reds. So I'm going to go ahead and get out some reds and oranges, and I'm going to clean off this space. That's another thing that I really like about this palette, is that when I need more space and like in the middle of a painting, it's like I don't have to get up. It's super easy to just like clean off essentially. think I dipped my hand in the yellow. So now my hands are yellow. Okay. So I'm gonna get out some red. And we're gonna make kind of like a dark brownish. I still have to finish these ones over here a little bit. But while I talk about that, I'll finish this while I talk about it. Essentially, we're gonna create a dark brown, like a reddish brown, like a maroon, so that we can start building up our layers. And with every layer that we create, it's going to be a little bit lighter, until it becomes like the brightest part of it. I'm just going to color this blue. I'll come back in with the colors I actually need. Remember that rocks have texture, so they don't need to be like perfectly all blended. It's actually better that they're not. And just real quick, I'm gonna go in and put in all of the darker spots on the rocks just while I'm doing this. And you can do this with a dry brush where you kind of have barely anything on your brush. But I'm mostly focusing on like the actual black parts where it is fairly dark. Adding a little bit of a shadow here. You can add texture to your rock if you want, if you're at that stage. I still have a lot of darkness to add to my rocks. My rocks are a little bit too light right now. So, but since these rocks are in front, we kind of can't finish them until we've done the back anyways. So I'm actually going to finish the back ones here before I start the other parts. think that's good. I'm gonna add some grayish black to this area because a lot of this down here is dark, and then it has like some red hues to it. So what I'm going to do is have main part of it kind of dark, and then when I add the lighter parts, that'll bring forth the shapes. And I'll show you what I mean. We have this kind of darker part, and if I go ahead and just put black where I see like the darkest elements, like there's kind of like this little triangle here. And you can create the rocks by adding all of the shadows and dark areas. And all of a sudden we have a bunch of rocks back there just by putting in the dark parts, having that wash of that of those colors. And our brain often will fill in, or we'll fill it in, we'll fill in the rest. All right, so I'm going to create a little piece right here. Because this back is black, it creates a really nice way for me to give shape. And you can continue to do that on the rocks by just adding a little bit of shadow here and there. By adding washes of the dark color. Or dry brushing if your paint is dry. Just add some imperfections in your colors and your rocks, and it will change the shape and texture of your rocks. I'm gonna go ahead and go over these rocks again because I just feel like adding that harsh contrast really did bring them to life. Alright, so I'm just adding, I still have that yellow hue in my rocks, so I'm just trying to add that blue to kind of counteract that. And I think we are ready to move on to the fire. Alright, so let's go ahead and make our red. Our base red is going to be our red and black. So I'm going to mix together some red, and I'm going to get more black in here. Okay, got more black. A little bit of black, and go easy on the black because it will, it'll just change the whole color. And if it's too dark, then you're not gonna see it. It won't look like red. It'll just look black. Okay. I'm gonna need a little bit more than that, so I'm gonna make a little bit more. And we're just going to add this color to just this whole thing. And in here, all of these pieces. We're just going to fill in all of this with that red color anywhere where we see that poking through. Anywhere where there's white. And you'll see that it looks very, very different on the black parts than it does on the white. It's very much brighter than it is. So I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow and make a little bit more of an orange. So while that dries, I'm going to get this orange color and add it a little bit to these rocks over here. And I might even just add this red instead. Yeah, it's actually a good color. So I'm just gonna add a wash of some of this. It doesn't need to be on all the parts. And you can always add lighter parts later. Alright, so while that dries, I'm going to come back in here with a second coat of my black on my logs. And when you're putting these in, try to go in the direction of like that the log is So with a log that's going up and down, I'm not really going to go side to side with my strokes. You can for a little bit, but just make sure that your ending strokes at the very end of that section is that you go back and forth, because it just adds character, and it's almost like if there are brush strokes, they'll be going in that direction, and it will create character and like texture in the direction of the actual log. I'll be like, you meant to do it because you did. Alright, so some of this you can add like your white to. So I have my red and then a little bit of white. You can add some of that to your rocks. And no one said that it's bad to use your fingers, so I'm just using my fingers to smear the different parts of it if I feel like it's too dense with color. Just to kind of blend it out a little bit, you're allowed to do that. I say so. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and add some of this color to the bottom. Okay. And I'm going to add black right here because I feel like there's just this void here that it should be darker. And I haven't done the bottom at all, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do a quick coat of like a blackish blue. All right, so now we are going to, let's see, we are going to add a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white to this red mixture. And with my small brush, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to start adding layers, especially at this point you can start adding little layers that where the fire is kind of coming through. And you can start, this color, it would be a good color to add like the color of heat or ember on the wood itself. So you can start adding that and anywhere else where the fire might be coming around. And I'm just going to cover up this whole fire part, and you can start adding little bits that go into the sky area. So I'm really covering up the ones that are in here because we're going to be adding so many layers to that. You want it to be covered up by those colors. All right. Alright, so now we're going to add more yellow and more white to this. And we'll just start from the bottom and add another layer. And you're just going to keep adding. You're going to add another layer. You don't have to cover up. Don't cover up all that red. Except for in the spots where it's like actually flaming hot. That's the part where you can just kind of add all you want to it. And I'm being very light with my brush in it, and it's like where it's kind of going. I'm just allowing it to come around the I'm allowing it to come around as it wants to. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab just some straight red, just some bright red, and put some bright red in here, mostly on the wood. Maybe add a little bit of white to it. Just to get some of that like red hotness going on. Now I'm going to take just pure white with a little bit of that mixture. So with a little bit of this orange color, whatever was on my palette knife actually, I'm going to make a fairly bright color. And I added just a little bit of yellow to it so it's not as orange. It's a little bit more on the yellow side. And we're going to start adding more of this bright color. And this color is reserved for more of like the things in the middle. Like this color is like things are getting hot and it's put more of this too. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a stipple. So I'm going to use the edge of I'm just going to use my fan brush because I don't have like a bigger one or like a different brush for this. And I'm going to get this kind of orange, and I'm gonna start adding some embers. Just around it all. And you're going to want to turn your brush as you're doing this. So that each time you put a new, each time you stamp it, it's going to be in a different direction and a new way going up. And if you don't have like a round stipple brush, what I'm doing is I'm just folding this in itself and creating like a round stipple brush myself with that. So that's also an option if you don't have like a round stipple brush. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my white, and with just my white and what's on my brush, which is barely anything, but it's enough to tint it so it's not pure white, is now I'm going to add in more of this, just another layer. Now this is the hottest part. This is going to be the hot. We might add a little bit of white, but this is the hottest part of your fire. So don't overdo this when it comes to this color. just ripped, wait, I just rip off a page. Rip off a page of what? I think I missed when you messaged that. Alright, I think I'm going to take my pure white and just add it to just the very middles of these sections. And you can add these different colors to your rocks because of how much it's radiating that heat. That light is going to be, so I'm adding kind of my orange colors and giving some of the rocks in here, maybe adding some rocks. And I'm going to focus on this one back here. There's like a white pinkish color going on. So I just added like some white to like my orangish color. And I'm just trying to figure out what I need to do to make this part look good. I'm gonna add some kind of red, I think, to it. I think I'm just going to bring this other rock out a little bit more. So add a little bit more black to this area. It's looking good. So now we're gonna have a little bit of fun. You can individually put in all of these embers, or you can go ahead and get a toothbrush or whatever brush you like to flick with. I'm gonna do this first. I'm gonna do the kind of the brightest yellow that we did. And first I'm gonna do that. And I'm going to angle my brush up so that it kind of goes up in a way. And then I'm going to get some white and do that one. And that's pretty much it for the fire. Now you can take as long as you need to kind of perfect your like the rest of it, kind of everything around it. It seems as though I need a little bit more red in some of these areas, and then out here I need a little bit more blue. So I'm actually going to do a coat of blue, like a wash of blue. And I'll show you what that looks like in case you want to do it too. I'm going to rinse out my brush, make sure I got that all. I'm just going to get a little bit of water, a little bit of my Ultramarine Blue. And if you want to see what it looks like in like a certain part of it, go ahead and just do it maybe on one of your rocks. And then you can decide if you want to do it. And then you can always like wipe away some of the black if you didn't like how that looked or whatever the case. I'm gonna go a little bit more saturated with color. So a little bit darker of a wash. I'm really only focusing on the bright parts of it. To add a little bit more hue of blue, a little bit colder. I think I'm going to come back with some black here. And mix that in just so it's not just randomly bright. And now I'm just working on making my darks darker. Because making your darks darker will make everything else pop. And at this point, that's kind of what we want. At this point, you can add as much texture to the rocks as you want. Right now I'm kind of stippling a little bit with my filbert. This is all optional. You don't have to put as much detail on the rocks if you want, because most of this class is really is about the fire and being able to get that fire really cool. So if that's all you're here for, then you don't really need to stay. But I'm just kind of adding different different techniques to the rock to kind of give them character and make it all kind of cohesive a bit. I'm adding less detail to the back rocks because it is further away, so you're not going to see as much detail on those. But it's still okay to add a little bit here and there. All right, I think I am done. I am, at least with the front rocks. I do want to add a little bit more of a red tone to these. So I'm going to add a red hue to them, kind of a red wash, and that'll come back with the I will come back with the what am I trying to say? The black, to kind of put that black back in. So that is what I'll do right now. I added that red. All right. So I'm just using a dry brush right now, just kind of adding shadows here and there. But I think I'm done. I think I can call it and be happy with it. All right, I think that is it. So thank you so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I will probably put my signature in this corner where there's a little bit more darkness. And I might even add a little bit more darkness just so that you can see it better. There. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed doing this. I would love to see your guys's your painting. So if you painted this with me, make sure to go on to my Facebook group. I will go ahead and leave a, let's see, I'll go ahead and leave that in the chat right now. And this is my free Facebook community, my artist community, where you can literally go to the media albums and you can look at literally all the classes I have available on either Patreon in the Cobalt tier, the Magenta tier, or free on YouTube. So that's a really easy place to look at all my classes that I have available. And you can click any one of those albums and see everybody else who painted with me. So when you're adding yours to the group, make sure you go to the actual class and you add it to the album, because then everybody else will be able to see it as well. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me. I really enjoyed this one. Stay tuned for next week. I think we're painting our parrot. I might be wrong. Let's see. I can actually tell you if I just go to my YouTube. I think that's wrong, or I'm not sure which one's next. I know our, oh yeah, nope, that's right. So we have our tropical macaw next week, which is our parrot. And that one's fun because we're going to use a little bit of bokeh on the outside. And then the week after that, we have our watercolor class. So if you've never done watercolor with me, it's a lot of fun. I look forward to it every time we do it. Essentially, I figured out that every time we do every time there's a 5th Wednesday, we'll do a watercolor class. So that's kind of how I'm doing it. But yeah, make sure you go and add yours to the album. I look forward to painting with you next week. And yeah, we'll see you then. Bye, guys.